Welcome to the Back in Time podcast with Kyle and JD, where every week we jump into our DeLorean, cruise to 88 miles per hour, and travel back in time to review our favorite films. Every week we talk about current cinema, the latest trailers, and we pick a new favorite film every single episode.
But I need a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. 21 gigawatts!
Don't say that! Never say that! Goonies never say die!
You're the best, we're the beautiful, we're the only Ghostbusters.
Now, here's your host, Kyle Autry, and his co-host, JD. All right, welcome to the Back in Time podcast. This is the final show of the year, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Justin DeSandro. Justin, how you doing tonight?
I am having a happy, jolly, merry holiday. Are we allowed to say that?
Sure.
Can we still say holidays? Or
yeah.
is holidays? Okay.
Let's get
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of wanted to start by just, thanking everybody for tuning in. And it's been a fun ride kind of going through these first 19 episodes, and we've got lots of plans for 2018. So thank you for downloading and subscribing, and we look forward to new listeners and continued listeners next year. JD, anything you wanna add in there?
Yeah, I mean, we came from nowhere, and instead of having a handful of sands, now we have a few pebbles. And we are going to brush those pebbles, which are you fans, into beautiful diamonds, because that's how science works.
So
is that good? Don't cut that out.
No,
that's a keeper.
Give us a moment to get onto our social media at Back in Time Pod, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Facebook at Back in Time, just / Back in Time Pod. You'll find us on there easy. And then all of our full episodes are up on YouTube as well. So give us a subscribe, and those will all be posted here. Now, let's jump into what's kind of coming down the pipeline here. So we're going to start off January with some speed. And by speed, I mean Keanu Reeves speed. So what are you looking forward to most, kind of covering our first Keanu Reeves film?
Well, I'm looking forward to. We've gone so long without being able to do a good Keanu impression, and I'm looking forward to that. One of my all-time favorite cinematic lines in a movie is in this.
Oh, great!
Do you want me to spoil it now or later? It's either delivered by Jeff Daniels or to Jeff Daniels. Did you remember Jeff Daniels is in this movie?
I did not. And you can also help us pick the movie right after that. And here's how it's going to work. So we're going to put a poll topic up right as you're listening to us. It's up on Twitter right now. So go onto our Twitter at Back in Time Pod and vote on what episode you want us to cover the second week of January. So we're going to dive back into the horror slasher film. So I thought this would be fun. We've never done this before. I'm going to add a little music in the background here. And let's talk about the movies that we're going to possibly choose from here. So number one is going to be Scream. So, Justin, what might we discuss if our audience picks Scream?
That's sort of like a defining movie of the 90s. What Wes Craven did in that film by taking... you're going to get me on a tangent here, but that's kind of like the granddaddy of 90s teen slasher films.
Sure. No, I agree with that 100%. And if you don't like Scream, maybe you'll like the ripoff, I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's our second choice. What might we talk about if we cover I Know What You Did Last Summer?
Well, first of all, we won't call it a ripoff. It's based on a freaking novel that came out way before Scream.
Hey, my apologies.
In my opinion, it has a better cast.
Yeah, and there's definitely two things I look forward to discussing, and it's Jennifer Love Hewitt. And
what are you waiting for?
And the two things happen to be on her chest. Number 3, disturbing behavior. What might we cover if we select disturbing behavior?
Paranoia, everybody's out to get me. The soundtrack.
Yes, such a good soundtrack. I also really like this cast, too. I think this cast is underrated. James Marsden, Katie Holmes, a young Katie Holmes, and Nick Stahl, who go on to star in one of the Terminator remakes.
Nick Stahl is great in this.
Man, I wish he would get his stuff together. I know he's had some substance abuse issues and drug issues. I wish he'd get it together because I always thought he was really good. So, and then the last choice, and I have a feeling you don't like this movie, but we're going to try it anyway. Urban Legend. What might we cover if we choose Urban Legend?
I will tell you about the very awkward date I went on in like 7th grade when I saw this.
Okay.
And I will spend the entire time talking about how much superior I think Urban Legend 2 is.
Awesome. And yeah, I think that one also has a nice cast. We could have our return of Joshua Jackson from Mighty Ducks. And we also get to talk about a young in the business Jared Leto in Urban Legend. So I kind of forgot he was even in that film. Help us. Go over to our Twitter right now, @BackInTimePod. Your 4 choices: Scream. Number 2, I Know What You Did Last Summer. 3, Disturbing Behavior. Or 4, Urban Legend. The poll will be up for the next 7 days. And vote, vote, vote. And we will pick a winner. And that's going to be the second episode of January. So enough of what's coming down the pipeline. Let's get the elephant out of the room. We both saw Star Wars The Last Jedi. I'm dying to hear what you're going to say about the movie. Before we get into our critiques or what we loved about the movie, it is now the number 2 movie of all time opening weekend at the box office. They did $220 million. The only film to ever do better than that, Star Wars The Force Awakens. JD, you have the floor.
First of all, let me apologize to all of my friends, my family members, those that love me and that I love you. But what the fuck was that? Was that seriously a movie about a slow-speed space chase? If all we do is stay 16 miles per hour ahead of them, their missiles can't hurt us. What? What? That was it. Where was the urgency? Where was the story? Where was anything? And seriously, fans, tweet at me with your death threats, or please, somebody support me, because there was no story development there. Rian Johnson, you've written some of my favorite movies, and yet you could not string together a Star Wars. You can burp a better Star Wars story. That's it. Your thoughts, Kyle. Do you love me or do you hate me?
I hated you at first, but then when you said it's a slow-speed Space Odyssey movie, basically, space chase, I agree with you now. I didn't even realize that that's the whole premise of the movie. Is they're traveling, definitely not at light speed, but at grandma Sunday morning drive speed in outer space, and nothing's fucking happening.
It's just these little tiny side stories that they don't, what Rey's doing with Luke doesn't really impact the story. What Finn is doing with Rose, I believe it's Rose. Is it Rose? It's supposed to impact the story, but instead of finding the code breaker, they find Benicio del Toro, who I will admit, I thought he was pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, I thought he was DJ. Yeah, I thought he was great.
I thought I was pretty impressed. I thought that was cool. And so instead of doing their mission, they stumble upon someone else to do the mission. It was just so convoluted and inconsequential. That's what I think. But outside of that, the acting was pretty on spot. The music was great. The cinematography was spectacular. I loved all the slow motion. It was a very beautiful movie, visually.
I mean, it looks good for sure.
But so does pornography. Okay. That doesn't mean that you win an award.
That's right. Now, I understand that they're trying to get over this new, the BB-8 drone. Why is R2-D2 not involved? Why is C-3PO barely in the movie? Why are they burying these characters?
See, and that's a good question. And I'm gonna play what you're saying, and I'm gonna take it to like the next step, because I'm a kind of a dark, sadistic individual.
Okay.
I always root for the bad guys.
Yep, I can see that.
What did they do to General Hux? He was so awesome in The Force Awakens, and now he was a laughingstock. And I was sitting there the whole time wanting Kylo Ren, wanting him with his mask on, wanting his sword, wanting his lightsaber, like wanting all of the dark arcs of the film, and we really didn't get any of it. Like you said, buried. That's such a great way of putting it.
Yeah. It's interesting what they decided to do with some of these characters. Man, I can kind of understand. A few days before the movie came out, I started seeing these articles about how Mark Hamill at first disagreed with the director's direction of where he wanted to take the film, and how he was ignoring advice from George Lucas. And then we watched this thing, and of course he has to put on a good face now because he's not going to shit all over the product. And it comes out, and I'm like, oh no, it all makes sense now. Why he was pissed off. We waited 34 years for Mark Hamill to return to Luke Skywalker, and I felt like it was a popcorn fart. They didn't do enough with his character. I mean, I like that he's involved, but I mean, other than the ending, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't like that he disappears into oblivion, but I mean, I like that he kind of fakes Kylo Ren out, and you think he's dead for a second, and then next thing you know, he's sitting on a cliff meditating the whole time. And I was like, oh, that's baller. And then all of a sudden, he's gone. So now we've lost, spoiler alert, if nobody has watched the movie, we no longer have Luke Skywalker, and we no longer have Leia. And we have no Han Solo.
Okay, time out. The story still has Leia.
Well, how?
Well, I know how, but that's, to me, that's a short-sighted decision that they made with the production. Is she's alive in the story.
Right.
And she died during production. Why, if they're going to kill her off in the next movie, why do her character justice and let her have a swan song?
I just don't. I mean, other than putting together a montage, what could you really do for her?
She could have died.
That's what I'm saying.
If she's alive in the movie,
if you're gonna move her into the next episode, that's the only thing you can do with her, because they've already said they're not gonna CGI her into the movie. So I thought they should have had a nice send off for her and kept Luke around for one more episode, and then give him his swan song. And let him move on. But there is a chance that, he could be more like a Yoda, and he could still pop up and raise conscious and stuff like that and still be involved. But
that's true. Very true.
I mean, we don't know exactly what's happened to him. There's not wasn't a period at the end of the sentence here. So.
And that's again, I feel bad critiquing somebody that I love so much, but that's just lazy screenwriting.
Yeah.
Why not give us some hints? We see him, spoiler alert to everybody, he's meditating, and then he just collapses. And then it's just, oh, okay, well, he's gone.
I will say now a couple things that I did like. I thought Rey's character evolved since the last movie. I thought she did good. I liked Finn. I thought his character evolved as well and continues to press the story forward. I did feel like Kylo Ren took a step back.
Unfortunate.
And I thought they would leave the mask on him more and make him a little bit more, I don't know, not scary, but intimidating. And right away that's the first thing they did. Let's get that damn mask off of him.
And that's even what was said. Why are you wearing that stupid mask?
Right. It was something like
his
that.
mask is so cool.
Right.
So good.
Yep. I did like that Carrie Fisher's daughter was involved. I thought that was really cool to see her in the movie. I don't know if you picked up on her or not.
I did not. I did not realize that. Who was her daughter?
Lieutenant Konix. And she does some stuff on the computer. She actually had the little buns in her hair, kind of like her mom did. But she's part of she's in it quite a bit. If I showed you her photo right now, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's her? She's in it a bunch.
I'm looking it up. Was she the blonde?
She's kind of got blonde, reddish hair. She's not super good looking. She's very, very plain looking.
Moon-faced girl? I feel like I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that girl.
Yes.
She was always in the center of the frame. She didn't say much, but she was important to the story.
Yes.
She always had great implications for Poe Dameron's plan. I agree with you. I had no idea that was her daughter. Hey there, are you single?
Yeah, so other than that, we'll move on to other things. Because we're going to linger on this. We might as well just make it a whole episode. But overall, I would rate it about what I see the rating at. So I think it's 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. And I think that's about right where I'd fall in line at about a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, but what's the audience score on Rotten Tomato?
So the audience score on Rotten Tomato is going to be 93% critic, and the audience score is 56. Eek.
56.
Ouchie.
I want our listeners to hear that. The audience response on Rotten Tomatoes to this movie is at 56%.
Right. So for every one person that likes it, somebody doesn't.
And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you have to realize when a studio as big as Disney puts out a movie as bad as this,
right,
they are paying for the critic response of
right.
a 93%.
For sure they are. Yeah.
That's a thing. Everybody listen. That is a thing.
Yes. Yeah, you're gonna have to take that somewhere else, because there's no way that every single critic loved that movie. With all the points that we just brought up, you're not going to convince me that like every one of them loved it. There's no way. So, especially as much as they shit on other movies that we like. Anyway, opening this weekend at the box office, we've got the reboot of Jumanji with The Rock, Welcome to the Jungle. That actually comes out on Wednesday, which may be the same day this episode comes out. So that's going to be a movie to check out. Also, the same day, The Greatest Showman. Wife's really excited about this. I'm going to have to go watch it. I'm not as big into like the musical stuff, but I do really like Hugh Jackman. And I always like going to the circus, so I'm kind of in on this one. Any thoughts on those two?
One, I seriously thought Jumanji, the new Jumanji movie, came out in August. I didn't realize it wasn't out yet. I'm sorry, Dwayne The Rock. Again, please bring your hatred to me and give me the people's elbow. I am sorry.
Yeah.
I've been hating on you for weeks. As for the Hugh Jackman, I can tell that it's a movie that I don't want to see.
Okay.
But I think it's actually going to be really good. I just can't see. I don't see myself seeing it. Like, I think I'm like you. It just
That's fair enough.
It's not tickling my fancy.
Not everybody's going to be into drama, musical, and performing arts movies. It's just, that's not everybody's cup of tea.
But the story looks great. Makes me want to watch The Prestige.
Okay. Yeah, I love The Prestige. That's a great movie. Later in the week, on the weekend, we're going to get Downsizing with Matt Damon, Pitch Perfect 3, and then Father Figures with Owen Wilson and Ed Helms. Do you have any interest in any of those three movies?
Hold on a second.
Also, is your apartment burning down?
There is a fire truck.
If it is, run to the light, buddy.
Run away from the light.
Well, not if you're dead.
Well, if I'm dead and I'm talking, then you've captured something amazing.
Then I'm with you too. What just happened? We both died?
Well, it's like a fart in the wind. I definitely think Father Figures looks like a funny movie.
Yeah.
It's one of those comedies that I think like it's a great hook. Kind of like what was that James Franco movie that came out? Why Him?
Yes. Yep.
It's
I did see
like
that. It was funny.
Yeah, that movie was hilarious. And it was such a great high concept comedy, the same way that The Hangover was. It's just like you can sell it in one sentence and it works. So I'm actually excited about seeing that movie. Oh, wow. I love Owen Wilson.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I love when he does that. I wonder if that's just like how he normally talks, or like, hey, can we add in like 7 or 8 oh wows throughout the movie script in here? It's kind of my thing. Oh, wow. Anyway, Ed Helms is hilarious. I love that guy. I'm also excited for Downsizing. I know we talked about that, I think, on the previous episode, but that looks pretty good to me. Although I think that movie is going to flop at the box office just because it was kind of barely getting some press. And then Matt Damon opened his big mouth and now people like hate him. So I think that movie's going to bomb. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm sorry. What did Matt Damon say? Matt Damon.
He isn't all into this this movement that's happening in Hollywood where all these big name people are getting taken down for sexual harassment. And he said something along the lines of, he thinks it's being like blown out of proportion a little bit. And here's his quote today, the one I saw. Matt Damon says, "We aren't talking enough about men in Hollywood who aren't sexual predators." So he's kind of trying to take a little bit of the heat off of, like, basically a lot of his friends. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, he worked with Weinstein on like 20 movies, so.
Okay, and I don't mean to marginalize what's going on at all.
Right.
But Matt Damon, that's the same thing as like a serial killer documentary focusing on everyone who hasn't killed someone.
Right.
Congratulations for not killing somebody.
That's
Yay.
the best. That's the best point I've heard out of anything I read. That's amazing. I'm not here to dump on Matt Damon. I like Matt Damon, but Matt,
So do I.
shut your big yapper, will you?
Give us a call. Let's do lunch. Let's shake hands. Let's play Rochambeau.
I'll punch you in the dick. Can't call that sexual harassment. I called it. Speaking of shut your big yapper, I don't know if you saw this online, but today is the 20th anniversary of the death of Chris Farley.
Shut your big yapper.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can that be a new section on the show?
Shut your big yapper? I love that.
Yeah.
And I'll put in a little clip. Yeah, let's do it. Insert clip here.
I wish you could just shut your big yapper.
I love it. So he one of the things I read online, I did not know this. I know I've watched a clip on YouTube. It was just a storyboard, but I was reading that he originally was the voice of Shrek, and he actually recorded almost 90% of the lines for the movie. And then when he died, they scrapped everything and replaced him with Mike Myers. So like the clip I watched had Eddie Murphy and like it was the like full dialogue from the movie. And I really liked it. I'm really sad we never got to see that. Don't you think they could have some money in like a re-release with that being a special feature option?
Like an alternate dimension movie?
Yeah. That'd be pretty cutting edge, right? I mean, I gotta imagine Mike Myers is probably an executive producer for that movie by now, so it doesn't hurt him any to put something out like that and a bunch of people want to see it.
So what Shrek did you like better? Who's the better Shrek?
I don't know, because what I saw was storyboard Shrek, so I didn't get to see him like with all the facial reactions and everything. But like just going off of his voice and like kind of shutting my eyes and imagining Shrek saying it, like it really works.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and call you out for shutting your eyes and imagining Chris Farley saying things to you.
It was only weird because I had a bottle of lotion next to me, so.
No. I'll give you
towels.
credit. It's only weird if you have the lotion and the tissue.
Yeah.
Puts the lotion on the skin.
Anything else you want to shut your big yapper about?
I think I need to stop talking about movies that I hated, and we can start talking about movies that we love and get right into Santa Claus.
There we go. That's a good transition. So let's start with some intro to Santa Claus here. It's a 1994 American Christmas family comedy directed by John Pasquin. It is the first installment in the Santa Claus trilogy, and it stars Tim Allen as Scott Calvin, an ordinary man who accidentally causes Santa Claus to fall from his roof on Christmas Eve. When he and his young son Charlie finish St. Nick's trip and deliveries, they go to the North Pole, where Scott learns that he must become the new Santa and convince those he loves that he is indeed Father Christmas. This is the first collaboration on film for Pasquin and Allen. They worked together previously on Home Improvement, and they would work later on films Jungle to Jungle, Joe Somebody, and the latest show Last Man Standing. The film has two sequels, The Santa Claus 2, The Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause. In comparison to the original, the former received mixed critical response, while the later was panned by most critics. The film was shot entirely in Greater Toronto Area. Oakville served as the city of Lakeside, Illinois. It was originally going to be released under the Hollywood Pictures banner, but was moved to Walt Disney Pictures after positive test screenings among children. Despite Hollywood Pictures receiving a marquee credit, placement of the studio's production logo on marketing materials, and the film's opening titles. As discussed in our previous teaser trailer episode, The Santa Claus grossed over $143 million in US and Canada and $189 million worldwide, and critically is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. What's your first memory of Santa Claus? The movie, that is. Not the actual person.
Not the creepy person that lives inside the mall and makes you bounce on his lap.
Right. Yes.
And he won't move the flashlight out of his pocket.
It's always weird. It's pokey. If I could describe it as something.
The first time I saw the Santa Claus, I'm sorry, it came out in 94?
I'm sure it comes out. Oh, you're talking about the movie. Yes, 94.
To start the whole thing over. Because I remember the first time that, and this is probably the actual truth.
Okay.
Memories of actually sitting down and like watching the movie and like understanding it and enjoying it probably was when I was about 11, and it was Thanksgiving at my uncle's house.
Okay.
And it was on the TV. I was on the TV, and all of us kids were sort of just, waiting around. Football game wasn't on yet, so something had to be on the TV. So the adults let us kids watch the Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And, that was sort of, 94, so that would have been like 95, 96. So that was like peak Tim Allen.
Yeah. Pre-Jungle the Jungle.
Nice name drop.
So I did see this movie in theaters. I believe I remember seeing this in Maryville, Indiana, and they had built a new theater over there. It was like state of the art. They had these giant like candy machines, and I remember this being like one of the first movies that I ever saw in that theater. For some reason, it's always stuck to me, and this is like a movie I watch religiously every year. And I can quote like the entire movie as I'm watching it. It's crazy. So this, along with Christmas Vacation, are my go-to movies, and it's like my mom's favorite movie too. So we always watch this when I'm home.
Hey, that's a really good point, because I think everybody has their go-to Christmas movie, whether it be Home Alone,
Yep.
whether it be Christmas Story, whether it be this. So, tweet at us. Let us know what was your go-to Christmas movie.
Right.
Kyle, try to guess what mine is. You're wrong.
Hold on. I'm going to go with Jingle All the Way.
Damn it. That was a bad guess. Scrooged. Scrooged is my go-to Christmas movie.
With Bill Murray or the older one?
No, with Bill Murray. I
Okay.
love that movie. For me, that movie's, I watch it every year. They play it on TBS.
Yes.
So it's always my Christmas Eve, go to bed, watch Scrooged.
Okay. I like Scrooge too. It's a good one. We'll have to do that next year. Double up with like some Home Alone and Scrooged in like
Right.
November, December.
I feel so bad because I know that we're both going to watch Home Alone this
Yes.
year.
And then have
And
to
we're not
rewatch it.
we're not reviewing it. I feel guilty to Macaulay.
You know what? I haven't watched it yet, and I think I'm going to just hold off. I think I'm going to take a year off from Home Alone. I'm still going to watch Christmas Vacation because I have to hear Cousin Eddie say, "Sorry, the shitter's full." And then the part, I was just telling my wife this because her uncle comes and he'll stay. Shout out to Uncle Dennis, but he'll come and stay in Fort Wayne with us. He's from Florida, and they'll stay for like 3 weeks. So I was like, he's exactly like Cousin Eddie. Like, he parks his RV. He doesn't have an RV, but he has a car. He's like, don't go falling in love with that thing because I'm going to take it with me when we leave next month. Clark looks at him like, you're leaving in a month? Good God. So, anyway, let's move into some interesting facts here. So, one of the interesting facts that I found is Tim Allen has a criminal record. And Disney is very known for having a no hiring of ex-cons policy, but an exception was made in this case. Why do you think that was?
Because that episode of Home Improvement where they catch Brad with marijuana, they know Tim Allen's legit. Do you remember that episode?
Vaguely. I know which one you're talking about, but I don't know it like enough to be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Hey, do you remember that time we emailed Zachary Ty Bryant to try to get him to be on our production team and he never responded?
Yeah, but then I remember you sending me a packet not too long ago of him pitching a movie to us.
That's right. That's right.
The wheels have turned here.
Well, the turntables have turned.
Here's something I think you'll find interesting. For 1 week in November of 1994, Tim Allen had the #1 movie at the box office, the #1 rated television show, and the #1 New York Times best-selling book, all at the same time. How crazy is that? I would assume that has to be, nobody's ever done that. I'll just say that now.
Like the Triple Crown.
Yeah, exactly. He's the Triple Crown of entertainment. There's nobody's ever done that. There's no way. So I'm not even going to fact check it. I'm just giving him the crown. Crown him. So a couple other things in here which I thought were pretty cool. I think we talked about this on the last episode too, but there's a sarcastic line in the movie where Tim Allen says to call 1-800-SPANK-ME. And during the film's release, a woman from Cleveland, Ohio, called the fictional number for her curious grandchild, and it turned out to be a phone sex line. And it wasn't until 1997 that Disney received complaints from parents whose children had called that number and racked up all these huge phone bills, and they decided to cut the line for future releases. So anything post 1997 has been removed, and they have put in a different line into the DVD or Blu-ray. Any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I was on the other line calling 1-800-SPANK-ME.
Oh, did you get through?
Well, yeah. Part of the problem is, I'm a fluffy bunny. They were trying to call me.
Nice. So there's and this is an Easter egg for those who are going to go and watch this movie after listening to the episode or prior to listening. When Scott and Charlie are leaving the North Pole in the sleigh and pass by the moon, there's a distinct Mickey Mouse logo in it. Or on it, I should say. Did you ever catch that Easter egg?
No, I have honestly never noticed that.
Yeah, I didn't see it. Even though I read the interesting fact, I just didn't look for it when I went back through. There were a couple big-known actors in the early 90s that were up for the role of Scott Calvin in Santa Claus. And those two men were Bill Murray, who declined, saying he didn't think it suited his humor, and then also Chevy Chase, who had scheduling conflicts that had to force Disney to choose somebody else for the role of Scott Calvin, Santa Claus. Can you imagine this movie with anybody but Tim Allen?
This is less of a Santa Claus movie and more of a Tim Allen movie, so no,
Yes.
I can't picture anyone else. He really is kind of the definitive Santa Claus, I'm assuming, for our generation.
Yeah. One of the things that I really loved it's the ending of the first run as Santa when they're in the sleigh and he said they're getting ready to head back home. He goes, oh, and it's done exactly like Tim Taylor.
Of course, it has to be.
Did you pick up on that right away, and did you love that?
I loved it. And then everyone in the audience does it with him, and then, then screw you, Brad Taylor.
We're going to jump into the full review in a second. We're going to take a quick bathroom break. The Splash Brothers are going to be right back on the other side.
Wait a minute, what are you doing, Doc? I need fuel.
We want to thank you for clicking the download button on today's episode. Please subscribe to us on iTunes and the podcast app of your device. That way you never miss an episode. The best way to help support the show is to give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review and tell your friends about the show if this is something that you dig. You can also find us on social media at Back in Time Pod, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Back in Time Pod. And again, all full episodes are on YouTube, and you can subscribe to our channel on there as well. We will be back in January with the first episode being Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. And then episode 2, you can vote on right now. So zoom on over to our Twitter and vote on which episode you want us to cover next. Now, back to the show. We begin at a company Christmas party. The CEO says it's been their best year yet, and it's all thanks to Do It All Dolly. They give a special shout out to Scott Calvin and his partner Susan Perry. We have our first look at Tim Allen here as Scott Calvin. This is really his breakout film role. What did you think of Tim Allen in this film?
Well, I think he's Tim Taylor in this film, and I think he's wonderful.
Is there another movie that he's done that you like more than this movie?
Is there another movie that he's done?
Yeah, Tim Allen.
Are you trying to get me to talk about Jungle to Jungle?
No, I'm just thinking, is this your favorite movie of his, or is there something else that you really like?
Santa Claus is my fave.
Have you ever watched Christmas with the Cranks?
Damn it, I have. That is a good one, too.
Yeah, that's not a bad Christmas movie. And
you know who that's based on a book by, right?
No.
Fact checking.
Do you?
Because it's either John Grisham or Stephen King.
Okay.
It's based on a book by John Grisham.
I would have thought you would have said Stephen King just because he has the most random stuff that people are like, that he wrote that one too?
Did you know that Stephen King wrote the original Romeo and Juliet?
No. You're joking, right?
Yes. How could he have written the original Romeo and Juliet? He would have been born like 600 years later.
I hate you.
He's a vampire.
I thought you were talking about for the movie, like he wrote the screenplay or something. I'm totally confused. Yes. Wow. Let me.
I'm sorry. Cut
hold on. Let me take all the egg off my face. All right, let's continue on. So on his way home, Scott calls his ex-wife to say he's going to be late. He blames it on the traffic, and he's beeping his horn and yelling at people, but the roads are completely clear. Just a funny moment by him. He finally pulls up to the home. We meet his ex-wife, Laura, played by Wendy Crewson, who apparently you have no attraction to, and his son, Charlie, played by Eric Lloyd. Any thoughts on these two actors here?
You're talking about the bitchy mom and then the annoying kid?
You hate the kid in this one, too. Interesting. You seem to really hate kids.
Yeah, apparently I hate all kids that had dads growing up.
We're going down this road again?
Just because you had a dad and Christmas and Thanksgiving and Michael Jordan's.
Yes. You got him in there. I did ask my mom for a pair of Michael Jordans for Christmas this year, just so I could have it for the podcast.
Oh, your mom is still alive?
Oh, God, shut up. I've met your mom. Such a dick.
Yes. I'm sorry. That was an inappropriate joke.
Okay. So, I should point out the guy driving the car is Neil, who's played by Judge Reinhold. He's the stepdad in this movie. What's your favorite Judge Reinhold movie?
Are you not gonna do your shtick and say
okay.
What's your
favorite Judge Reinhold movie, and why is it this one?
That's a really good point. Touche. Hold on, there's cops coming. My favorite Judge Reinhold movie, it has to be Santa Claus. Neil in this role in this movie is so good with his weenie whistle. Spoiler alert. Judge Reinhold wants a weenie whistle.
A weenie whistle. That was my best Judge Reinhold. Laura and Scott get into an argument in the other room, and apparently a bully at school told Charlie there was no Santa. Neil decided to tell him the truth, which upset Scott because he thought if we're going to ruin his imagination, he should be part of it. I have to say, I'm on Scott's side here. I don't think the stepdad should be telling him there's no Santa Claus. Do you agree or disagree with that?
It's definitely crossing a line. And I feel like it's something that the mom, I don't know, it's something about it just feels really icky.
Yeah.
Yep. Like, that's not your spot, Judge.
It's not. You got to back off, Judge. Charlie hugs his mom goodbye. He says, do I have to stay here? And then he wants to know if his mom can pick him up early. And she says yes. And he says, I'm talking sunup. You're here. And meanwhile, Scott's watching this all from the kitchen, pretty much hearing that his son doesn't want to be with him. It's got to be a little heartbreaking for Scott. So I felt bad for him in this scene. In the next shot, we have a really great-looking Christmas dinner, but as the camera pulls away, it's actually just the television, and Scott's in the other room trying to make the dinner look just like that, but he's burned the yams. We go into the kitchen. He's putting out the turkey with a fire extinguisher, and he says to Charlie, and this is why you need a high-quality fire extinguisher right here in the kitchen. How home improvement was this?
It reminded me so much of The Man's Kitchen. Remember that episode?
Yes.
And it was just everything about that kitchen and this scene. It was just, I don't know, for something about it just reminds me of The Man's Kitchen.
In the next scene here, Charlie and Scott are in the car. They're looking for a place to eat. They pull up to Denny's, and Scott says, Denny's is always open. Charlie says he doesn't want to eat here, and Scott says, come on, it's an American institution. Are you a fan of Denny's? Do you have a lot of those? Have you ever eaten there growing up? I know it's kind of like, it feels like a Midwest thing.
I do think it's a Midwest thing. Yeah, I remember Denny's. I'll one-up you. Do you remember the commercials that Denny's used to have with the old ladies? And they're like, let's eat at Lenny's. Do you really remember those?
I don't remember them, but I'm laughing just because it sounds funny.
And then they'd go into the Grand Slam used to cost like $2.99.
Oh, wow. The only thing I remember about Denny's is I always got moons over my hammy. And we would go there like late, like in high school I was in a band, and we would go there at like 1 o'clock in the morning after the show because it was like the only thing open. And give me a Coke and a moons over my hammy. And we'd sit there and talk about how amazing we were, even though it probably sounded like cats. So we go inside the restaurant, and after Scott's called it an American institution, we hear a very loud group of Chinese men who are just yelling at the top of their lungs and eating at the same time. They get seated. The waitress's name is Judy. That may be a point later in the movie. Spoiler. I'm going to insert a clip here, and this is one of my favorite parts of the movie here, so I'm going to hit play on this.
Denny's. It's always open.
I don't want to eat here.
What are you talking about? Everybody likes Denny's. It's an American institution. Coffee? No, thank you, Judy. What do you say we start out with cold glasses, delicious seasonal favorite, eggnog?
I don't like eggnog.
We're out.
Coffee, decaf.
Oh, chocolate milk, please.
We're out.
Plain milk's fine.
Okay.
At least we know they got hot apple pie.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this scene here? Everything's out at Denny's.
So quotable. It really paints Scott Calvin as the dramatic character that he is. You know, he's so tragic. He's so fallen. His life is in shambles. Yeah, work is good. You know, he's got do it in bed Dolly.
Yep.
But things aren't good with his wife. He has to deal with Judge Reinhold, whose head comes to a point. His kid doesn't like him, doesn't want to be with him. He can't cook dinner. And he just tries to go to an American institution. And guess what? He can't get American classics.
Yep. So back at the house, Scott is reading Charlie A Christmas Story. Charlie dozes off, and Scott skips ahead in the story, and he closes the book. And as he's walking out, Charlie wakes back up and says, "What's a rose such a clatter?" And they start talking, and Scott does his best to explain what that is. And then he gets into why Santa is real and how he gets around to all the houses in the world. Charlie wants to know if he believes in Santa, and Scott hesitates a bit, but says, "Yes, of course, I believe in Santa." And he tells him to go to bed. And on his way out the door, Charlie says, "Well, we better leave him some milk and cookies just in case." Okay, so he's starting to, kind of fire back up his imagination a little bit here. So I think he's doing some good dad work. Any thoughts on that?
We know that Tim Taylor, Scott Calvin is a great dad. We know that. So it's, I think, important that he's fixing the mess that Neil made. Neil, you made a mess. It's a mess.
Outside, we can hear a noise that wakes Charlie up. He jumps out of bed, and he hears the noise again, so he races down to his dad's bedroom. Scott is sound asleep. He shakes him, he wakes him up, and tells him that he heard a clatter. And Scott's like, "Clatter? What are you talking about?" And he kind of ignores it. He sits up in his bed to take Charlie back to his bed, and he hears the noise as well, looks up at the ceiling, and he tells Charlie to stay here, and then he wants to know if he knows how to call 911. And Charlie says, "Sure, 911. I thought that was a funny scene by Charlie. I know you don't like him, but what do you think of Charlie here?
Yeah, okay, give him points for being witty. But I think I just sort of realized something when you said, you asked for my response on Charlie, and I realized my two least favorite kids in movies are Charlie from the Santa Claus and Charlie Conway. So, apparently I hate Charlies. And I also hate Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Why do you force your grandpa to get out of bed? You just little prick.
Hey, I'm just spitballing here, but do you also hate Charlie's Angels?
I don't hate Charlie's Angels, but I hate Charlie. How are you going to let these girls go out in the field like that? Okay. So dangerous.
Yeah, interesting. You do have a thing for Charlies. That's weird. Outside, Scott runs to the street and looks up at the roof and shouts, "Hey, you!" And it startles the Santa Claus, and he slips and slides off the roof and onto the ground, falling has to be at least 15, 20 feet. Charlie comes running out. You got him! And you killed him! That still makes me laugh. Again, Charlie's got another funny line here. And Scott argues that he did not kill him. And he checks for his identity and finds a card that says, if something were to happen to me, put the suit on and the reindeer will know what to do. And Scott kind of muffs at the car. He's reindeer. And as they get up and they look around, go back up to the road, they look up the roof, and Santa waves bye to them on the ground. And up on the roof are 8 reindeer and a sled. So sure enough, the reindeer are up there. What do you think of this scene here with Scott killing Santa Claus?
It's definitely a really brutal scene. Like it's kind of creepy, and like it really puts like an eggshell around the premise of the story that you realize that 1, Santa Claus is real, 2, Santa Claus is going to die. And like even as I'm saying that, like I realize the complete mortality that Scott Calvin has by accepting the Santa Claus. It's a death warrant.
Right.
He will one day be murdered.
Charlie looks back at Santa, and he's now gone, and it's just the suit remaining on the ground. Scott says he's naked somewhere. I always picture a naked Santa Claus running around. Do you ever pick up on that? It's such a subtle line that he throws in there.
No, honestly, I never have.
It's so small, but I always, like this time around, like especially when I was doing notes, I was like, God, that's such a good line. I wonder why it never gets talked about. Anyway, Scott has a conversation with himself, and he's talking about what's transpired. You know, guys on my roof fell off. Not my problem. I didn't kill him. And Charlie points at the ladder, and Scott turns around and headbutts it, and Charlie starts to climb up and says, look, Dad, arose such a clatter company. And he starts climbing up to the roof. Scott and Charlie get to the top. One of the reindeer rips a nice fart, and Scott looks at him and goes, easy, Rudolph. And they get into the sleigh. Charlie wants to go for a ride, and Scott, trying to get him out of the sleigh, steps in and says, now let's go. And the sleigh takes off, and they shoot to another rooftop. But what did you think of this first scene here? First shot of the reindeer. What are your thoughts on them and seeing the sleigh take off? This is 1994 CGI at its best.
I think the CGI is cool. I think it looks great, but I'm more interested in the fact that there isn't actually a Rudolph. And, you know, we're raised being Rudolph or Santa and his, 9 reindeer?
Yeah.
And so this movie actually doesn't include Rudolph. It just includes the 8.
Well, I mean, technically, like any Santa Claus movie, I believe they only do 8. It's the cartoon, right? The claymation one that introduces Rudolph.
Right.
So, gosh, I haven't seen that in so long.
So is that the official differentiating factor between what can and can't include? Is Rudolph a private entity? Does Disney have to buy the rights from Fox?
That's a good question. Hard to say. Let me ask you this: do you think the reindeer are puppeteer, CGI, or animatronic?
Do you know the answer?
I do not.
Oh, okay. Then I don't. I feel bad guessing. I don't think they look CGI. I don't think they look puppets. I have no idea. They almost look real.
I guess we'll never know about the reindeer. Your guess is probably as good as mine here. So they land on another rooftop, and when they land, Charlie tells him that he needs to deliver the toys. And Scott tells Charlie, where are they going to go? I don't know how to get them out of here. This bag's empty. This whole thing is stupid. And Charlie says, why does everything I want to do, why is it always stupid? And it really makes Scott feel bad. And he starts putting on the Santa suit. He's not happy about it. He even makes a line about, I hope the guy that lives here is a tailor, because his pants are about 20 sizes too big.
Or that's a Tim Taylor comment.
It could be very well. That's definitely has to be it, though, right? But anyway, the next time he picks up the toy bag, now it's full, and it starts floating up in the air, and eventually sucks him down the chimney pipe. And as he's flying in the air, I like this line too. Charlie says, "You're flying!" And he says, "It's okay, I lived through the 60s. Why? What about the 1960s has to do with flying? Is it just because that was a heavy drug period?
That's how I always take it, as a drug joke.
Yeah. Very appropriate for Disney, though. throwing a little drug joke. In the house, Scott empties the bag of toys when a dog enters barking. Upstairs, the homeowner shouts down, "Who's there?" And we hear a rifle cock. And Scott runs back to the chimney, and the bag shoots him right up and out of the chimney space. So they get into the sleigh, they take off again, and I know Scott says, "Pull me in quick, we got to get out of here." And they go all of about 20 feet to the next house. So this time Scott argues that the bag is empty, there's no toys, and he checks again, and again it just fills right back up. But there's no chimney on this one, it's just a small pipe. And as he's floating, he says, "You got to be kidding me." And it lowers him down and sucks him right through the pipe. And magically, a fireplace appears. And I have to say, for 1994, I thought the graphics on this were pretty cool, with the fire pit appearing, or the fireplace, I should say. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Disney keeps the graphics very small. Like, it's not like they're on a foreign planet or something like that. It's just very simple that they're able to pull it off very generously.
Yeah. There's a little girl sleeping on the couch. She wants to know why his coat is so baggy, and he says he's watching his saturated fats. And she says, "What happened to your beard?" He says, "I shaved it. Now, do you want this doll or not?" And on his way out, she tells him he's supposed to drink the milk, and he explains that he's lactose intolerant, and he's about this close to taking back all the toys. What do you think of Scott Calvin's attitude here with the young little girl?
It's very parental, the way that he has.
Yes.
I feel like he's acting the same way that any parent would act in this situation. Where they're very annoyed, they just want to go to bed, they don't want to drink the milk. I mean, it's difficult because Santa Claus is real. It's a real thing.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. And so, for him to be in the role of this real person that actually does deliver presents, it has to be frustrating.
Yeah. No, I see your point. He goes through one more house. In the next shot is Scott and Charlie, and they're flying in the sleigh. Charlie's fallen asleep when Scott wakes him up, and we hear our first "ho, ho, ho" from the former Toolman. You have a much better impression. Save me here.
Oh.
There we go. He says when he wakes up, he's going to get a CAT scan. And they don't arrive back at Scott's place here, even though he tells them they want to go home. Instead, they arrive at what has to be the North Pole. And we see an elf come out, and a pole rises from the ground, and he pushes a button, types in a little code, and they start to lower down into the ground here. I thought this is pretty cool. I'm also confused on, and spoiler, in the sequels, I don't recall them ever going down into a hole. It's almost like it's like an open land that they land on in those movies. In this one, you have to type in a code and then you go underground. What's up with that?
Maybe the North Pole evolves. Maybe it gains ground. There's some land warfare. Have you ever played the game Risk? It's a thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I always thought this, the music and the little elf comes out. It's just I feel like I'm 9 years old again when I watch this scene. I'm just like, oh my God, they're there. Where's Santa? Oh no, it's Scott. I'm totally in. I bought in already. So as they lower down, we see a bunch of really young kids. They're running around. They all have the pointy elf ears, though. I always pictured elves being a little bit older. How about you?
I think that's the beauty of this movie, though, that it pictures the whole mythology of Santa Claus in a different way.
Yeah.
We're used to, you think of adults almost you think of elves almost like gnomes, where they're adults, but elves are different than gnomes. They're not gnomes.
Right. First thing Scott says when he gets out is, "Where are all the grown-ups?" So, to my point, he's kind of feeling the same way. Approaches one of the young, or I shouldn't say young elves because they're all really old, but he approaches an elf and he says, "Who's in charge?" "You are." "Who's the head elf?" "You are." And Scott just doesn't get it yet. And we're introduced to Bernard next, head elf. He's played by David Krumholtz. Any thoughts on Bernard here, or David Krumholtz, the actor, who's never the star, but always, I feel like he's a scene stealer.
He is a scene stealer. David Krumholtz is fantastic. He's always funny. He's so great in everything from this all the way up to, Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
You know, like anything that anytime and what he's in I Love You Man, isn't he?
He's been in like everything. He's
I'm
got
gonna fact check that really
he
quick.
has 100 credits to his name right now. So he's in This Is the End. He is in 10 Things I Hate About You. He's in I Love You Man. He's Sydney's buddy, number 3. He's also Goldstein in Harold and Kumar.
That's right, he is Goldstein, isn't he?
Yep. Oh, another one I forgot he's in. He's in Superbad too. He's Benji. When they go to the party and he makes Michael Cera's character sing, he's like, "Sing something, baby."
At first I thought you said Super Troopers and I got super excited.
No, he'd be great in Super Troopers though.
I was like, no, that's the guy that's married to Christina Hendricks.
I would love to know why he didn't come back for Santa 3. I'm sure we're going to cover that if we ever do that one.
One day. We'll get there one day.
I can imagine we will, but his 2006 is not really packed full of movies, so seems like they either didn't want to pay him or he had enough. Also, for those of you that are a big fan of the franchise, one thing that I like to point out is in this movie he has no limp. And number 2, he walks really funny and has a heavy limp. And he's also much cheesier. I prefer Bernard in the original, and I hate Bernard in number 2. So I don't know if you felt the same way. Charlie is introduced to Bernard. I love that Scott can't seem to remember his name. Barabbas, Berard. He can't get it right. Anyway, Bernard gives him a snow globe to Charlie and tells him it's very old, and he needs to take very good care of it. He tells Charlie to go grab something to eat, and he takes him off with an elf, and Bernard tells Scott to follow him if he wants to get out of those clothes. So as they're walking, Scott's asking a lot of questions. Bernard's explaining to him how things work, and he explains the Santa Claus to Scott, who doesn't seem to understand. He says, well, you're a businessman, right? So the clause, as in the clause at the end of a contract. And Bernard starts to get heated here at Scott, who says it's not his job to deliver the toys, it's yours. And because you read the clause and you put on the suit, that means you're the big man. And Scott wants to know what happens if he chooses not to believe. And you could hear a pin drop because everybody stops working and stares at him. And Bernard kind of leans in and says, well, you'd be disappointing millions of kids all over the world. So what did you think of this scene? And kind of how this relates to the story here.
Bernard definitely comes off as a dick, because at this point, I'm in Tim Allen's corner. You don't know what to think. You don't know what's going on. You've been abducted by reindeer. Your kid, Charlie, is being a menace. I hate you, Charlie. Why are you so bad? Bad boy.
Don't call him bad boy. It's so weird. Bad boy.
Bad boy. No, and then he gets this feisty ass elf that comes in here, and I think again, Krumholtz does an amazing job of delivering his performance here.
He really does. Like the part that stands out to me is Scott's kind of like rambling, and he's like, "Try to understand me," and he just like screams at him, and Scott's like, "Whoa, jeez, who pissed in this guy's Cheerios?" Judy takes Scott into to his room next. She hands him a pair of pajamas. They're red with a big SC on the chest. Judy re-enters the bedroom a moment later and brings him some hot cocoa. She says it took her 1,200 years to perfect. And Scott takes a drink of it and then compliments her on how good she looks for her age. And she responds and says, "Thanks, but I'm seeing someone in wrapping." What did you think of this scene here with Scott and Judy? And we have the Judy connection going here from Denny's.
I'm so glad that we have the Judy connection because it's so funny. The scene coming up is hilarious. They don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
But it's so the fact that they have the same name, I think it creates a great parallel and a great juxtaposition between, is Scott Calvin going crazy?
Right.
Did he have too much eggnog? Like
no, because they were out.
Oh, but that was nice.
At least we got that warm apple pie. We did. Scott is really struggling to understand what he's seeing, and he admits to Judy he's having a hard time believing. He tells her that he stopped believing in Santa a long time ago. And Judy says that doesn't surprise her. Most grown-ups do. And they just kind of grow out of it. And Scott says, "I see it. but I don't believe it. And she says, well, seeing is believing, and believing is seeing. Kids don't have to see this place to know it's here. They just know. And Judy tells him to get some rest, and she leaves, and Scott lays down next to Charlie, who's already asleep. And that's the end of the scene here. And the next morning, we're going to wake up back in their own house. And Scott right away notices he's wearing the same PJs as what he fell asleep in. So he goes running outside the house. He's looking for Santa in the snow. Nothing's there. He runs to the street to check the roof. There's nothing there either. So he goes back in the house and kind of plops on the couch and thinks it must have just been this big dream. And as Charlie's opening the presents, Scott points to his shirt and says, SC. And Charlie says, yeah, Santa Claus. Hey, Dad, Scott Calvin. And he points out the correlation to the initials. The doorbell rings. Laura has come to pick Charlie up. And Charlie starts to tell his mom how they spent all night at the North Pole. So anyway, what did you think of this scene here with the morning after and just kind of coming to the realization that was it real? Was it not real?
I think I definitely at this point I'm in Scott Calvin's corner where, you know, he's uncertain,
yes,
but it was real. And he has to face his ex-wife who's being a total biatch. Oh. It's like, go get a haircut. What is with this haircut? This haircut's no good.
Did she go into the salon and just say, I want the Amish cut? That's
I want the Jillian Forrestal from Olivet's.
So Scott runs outside to ask Charlie some more questions after he's got into the car. Neil compliments him on his pajamas, and Charlie explains that he's the new Santa. Neil, of course, doesn't believe any of it and says we'll talk about it at home, and he'll probably charge him for it. In this next scene, we're at Charlie's school. He's supposed to introduce Neil first for Bring Your Dad to School Day. But instead, he walks over and tells him he wants to bring his dad up first. And he tells the whole class that he's Santa Claus. And Scott tries to cover, and he makes a joke about he's like Santa Claus because they both work really hard once a year. And he's just sitting there with a stuffed animal in his hand. He's sweating in front of the classroom. They're peppering him with questions. One little bastard wants to know if he wants to be Santa Claus, he can just push him off the roof. What do you think of this scene here?
Exactly. That's what I was saying. He's destined to die. This little morbid axe murderer knows what's up. No, but so this scene for the first time, like even from when I was younger, like when I saw this scene, like it never clicked in my head that he worked for a toy company.
Yeah.
And he became Santa Claus.
It's very clever writing, isn't it?
It really is. It's an
subtle.
amazing connection that like I always forget about until this point in the movie, and I'm like, oh, that's right. There's like this whole sub-level of context.
Yeah. We're in the principal's office next. Neil wants to speak first because he's a doctor. And he wants to know, what was the last thing you and Charlie did before you went to bed on Christmas Eve? And Scott thinks about it for a second, says, well, we shared a bowl of sugar, a couple shots of brown liquor, played with my shotgun, dressed a field cat, and looked for women. Come on, folks, I read him a book. What do you think we did?
There was no beaking.
Zero beaking. The principal tells him to sit down and with Charlie and explain to him that he's not Santa Claus. So in the next scene, we go to the zoo, and Scott and Charlie are looking at some polar bears, and right away Charlie says, look, that looks like the polar bear from the North Pole. And Ken Scott's just like, come on, you got to stop talking about this stuff. So they go walking down the street, and as they're talking, Charlie looks back and kind of chuckles, and we see 8 reindeer following behind them. Any thoughts on this? Anything with like the principal's office or the zoo here?
I love the comparison that we get between Scott and Neil.
Yes.
And then I love that we're getting the full circle to realize, again, is he crazy? Is he not crazy? But the reindeer are following him. Something is awry.
In the house next, Charlie is playing pretend Santa Claus in his room. He's got a sign on his door that says North Pole South. Wouldn't this just be South Pole? I hate to rag on the 8-year-old here, but come on, buddy. If it's not north, it's got to be south, right?
Yeah, my second grade education taught me that. There's north, south, east, and west. Never eat sour wheat.
Apparently, Laura calls Scott to come and talk with Charlie because he's playing Santa Claus in his room, and he shows up, and she meets him outside, and he says, where is he? But he could be in his room with a red hat on wearing galoshes. Not Neil, I meant Charlie. Laura didn't think the comment was funny. I did. I love Tim Allen humor. So in Neil's office, he's pretty much interrogating Charlie here, but Charlie makes a really good point. He asks Neil if he's ever seen $1 million, which he says no. He says, well, just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not real. Point Charlie. Any thoughts on that?
Point Charlie. I mean, fine. Give Charlie a point of credit. Like, I hate you, Charlie, but you can have a point.
Neil tells Scott he thinks Charlie's conflicted, and Scott makes light of the situation and tells Neil he should worry more about where he's going to get more sweaters once the circus leaves town. Scott takes Charlie on a walk. He tells him there's no reason why we need to tell anyone about the North Pole, and this is just going to be our secret, and he's going to pay him $5 to hold that secret. I don't know what $5 is going to buy him. Maybe... I guess that's like a Happy Meal, so that's not a bad deal, right?
No, I would love a Happy Meal right now. I might call Uber Eats.
Is that a thing out in D.C.?
Has it not reached Indiana yet?
Definitely not. We're still trying
to pay Uber Eats. Shout out to you guys. Basically, what you do is you pay someone else to get into their car, go to the store, and get you your food and bring it to you.
Nice. You know what? I guess I should take it back. We don't have Uber Eats, but my wife's actually doing something like that. It's called Shipt, and you can order all your groceries online, and then she goes, picks them out, and delivers them.
Yeah, it's like that.
But she won't go pick up.
Restaurant.
Yeah, but she won't go pick up like McDonald's for them. So it just has to be like the grocery store only.
So what you're saying is your wife will not bring me McDonald's, right?
No chance. She won't even bring me McDonald's. The next morning, Scott gets up out of bed. He rips a big old fart, and then he goes to the mirror, and he's growing a pretty thick beard, and he's got himself a nice little gut going on, too. He jumps on the scale, and as he's sitting on the scale, it starts to just go up in weight little by little, so he jumps off and goes, something must be wrong with the scale. He's late for a meeting in the next scene, and he's wearing the old Canadian tuxedo here. He's in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. His boss says, oh my God, when he sees him walking up, and Scott tells him he was stung by a bee, and the doctors say the swelling should go down. We should be all right. And then he places his order for lunch, and he orders nothing but junk food. And he's going to wash down his cookies and cheesecake and his hot fudge sundae with a nice tall glass of milk. And his partner from earlier says, stung by a bee, Scott? What do you think of this here?
It's funny the way that he's slowly becoming Santa Claus, and he's slowly like acclimating to the food and the sweets, and you know, he orders the salad with the dressing on the side, and then 4 desserts?
Right. He's like, I'll take a salad, dressing on the side, and then let me get a hot fudge sundae, extra hot fudge, cheesecake, cookies. And he just keeps going. And I think this is why I like the original so much, is we actually get to watch the transformation, which is also the best part of the sequel, when he starts to like basically de-transform back to his old self. So, spoiler, I guess. So they're pitching a new toy next. I'm going to play a short little clip here, and let's take a listen.
This time he's going total tank.
Wait a minute. No way. No way Santa's going anywhere without his sleigh.
He would if he's trying to sell the total tank.
Well, isn't that a pretty picture? Santa rolling down the block in a Panzer.
Well, kids, I certainly hope you've been good this year, because it looks like Santa just took out the Pearson home.
It's coming!
And another thing, but what about reindeer? Reindeer and Santa, Santa and a reindeer, it's kind of a package deal.
Calvin, you don't believe in Santa, do you? Calvin, can we get back to the presentation?
We're not done yet. Since we've opened this box, have any of you tried to build the total tank? It's got 10,000 parts. And even if you do get it together, it breaks 10 minutes later.
All right, what'd you think of this scene here?
It's like, and it reminds me of so many typical business meetings.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been in typical business meetings just the same, where some jackass comes in with his great idea and he gets shot down by the obviously superior SC.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the way that they ride the line between black and white with they're doing a kids campaign for a toy utilizing Santa Claus, and there's literally Santa Claus in the room.
Right.
Like when you think about like how like the black and white of the scene, it's I don't know, like you mentioned earlier, it's actually extremely well written, and this scene is that. It's a well written scene.
Yep. I love his delivery on everything. Well, isn't that nice? Santa rolling down the street in a Panzer. It's so funny just listening to him deliver these lines. His boss sends him home, and he tells him he's starting to look like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and he needs to go see a doctor, do something. But get yourself together, and he sends him out of there. So next, we've got Scott, and he's visiting the doctor. His gut is tripled in size, and he now has half a beard, and it's almost completely white. The one part I really liked about this is where his heartbeat makes the Christmas jingle, and the doctor just kind of looks at him. And then Scott also mentions to the doctor, how fast does facial hair grow? Because I shave in the morning, and by the afternoon, I look like this. And he points to his beard. But, he's healthy as a horse, Clydesdale. What'd you think of this?
I love this scene so much because the doctor is like, he's just such a generic doctor.
I know.
And the heartbeat always makes me laugh. He calls him a Clydesdale, which makes me think of, what is that, the Budweiser Christmas commercials?
Yep.
I don't know. I love when a movie uses a scene like this to push the story forward.
Yes.
And to push the character forward and to establish a baseline with the audience. It's it's a very necessary scene. And it's just, I don't know, it's a cool, fun, funny scene, and you're closer to Scott Calvin because of it. And I don't know, it's just very Christmassy. And we're slowly getting to the point where he's going to begin to accept his fate as Santa Claus. Yep,
we're getting there rapidly. Charlie's soccer game is going on next. Scott is watching from a bench. A little girl comes over and taps him on the shoulder and tells him she wants some ballet slippers. Laura and Neil show up on the other side of the field, and they look over at Scott, who now has a line of kids trying to talk with him. Scott tells one of the kids he has to stop, and he yells, I didn't get to tell you what I want yet. Fax it to me. So 1994, if you're a young kid listening to this episode, we didn't have cell phones yet. You couldn't just text it. You couldn't just email it. You had to fax it. Anyway, Neil says, Scott, I have to say, it's safe to say you've taken this Santa thing to a whole new level. Here's my card. Call me. And Laura accuses Scott of changing his appearance to make Charlie like him. Again, I know what you're going to say, but what do you think about this scene here? Because now I'm on Scott's side.
Yeah, I think Neil needs to be giving some private sessions to the mom. Really? Really? Come on, he's clearly Santa Claus. How do you not see that?
If nothing else, I guess to their point is they're used to seeing him, and he's pretty skinny in real life. He's not a real big guy. And now he's kind of ballooned up. He's got a white beard, white hair. And this has all happened within a couple months. So
you know what?
I think they just think he's losing it, and they're worried about him being around a little kid.
That's a really good point. That's something that I've never considered, is looking at the movie from their perspective.
Yes.
And being that it's called The Santa Claus, you come into this movie knowing that he is the Santa Claus, And I get the irony of the title. It's the Santa Claus. But if the whole movie was just shown and told from their perspective, it would be so different.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it a great movie. That's the level of and the subcontext of the character development that makes it good. That it sticks. I just realized that right now.
Good. Good. Glad I can contribute. Usually you put all the good stuff in. Scott gets a knock at the door. The UPS guy tells him he's got some packages for him. Scott says, go ahead and just leave him inside. I'll leave the door open. And he comes down from finishing up shaving his face. And the note says, here's the list. And he's got boxes from the ground practically to the ceiling all the way through the entire entrance of his house. Scott chases after the trucks, wants to know what he should do with all these boxes. And he now has a full white beard, full white head of hair, and he's walking down the street. This is probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I wish I would have grabbed this clip, but he says, Annie, nice. Johnny, naughty. Gary, nice. Veronica, very nice. And she says, in your dreams, Slay Boy. Now, in the last episode, we kind of went back and forth. I thought she said Fat Boy, and then I also thought she might have said Playboy, but it's actually Slay Boy.
Slay Boy makes the most sense.
It does.
And what's so sad is there's a good amount of sexual innuendos in this movie that I feel like there's a deleted scene where it is in his dreams.
Oh, hey-oh. He's about the beak. Now,
self-beak.
Scott's shaving in the next scene again. He's also trying to dye his hair. As soon as he washes his face off with the water and a towel, his hair and beard grow back completely, immediately completely white again. So at this point, he's got no choice. He's going to have to just ride this out. Neil and Laura are at the lawyer's office next. Laura is having second thoughts about what they're doing as Charlie is led to the back by the judge or one of the lawyers. I'm not sure exactly who he goes in the back with. Or she wants to know what's so bad about Charlie believing in Santa Claus. And Neil says, well, he's too old for one. She tells the story about when she stopped believing in Santa Claus. She wanted a mystery date play, and it was the only gift she wanted that year. She got dozens and dozens of gifts, but mystery date was never there. And that's when she stopped believing in him. Neil says he was 3. It was an Oscar Mayer weenie whistle. Christmas came, no weenie whistle. What do you think of this scene here? I love the weenie whistle part.
Okay, so let me ask you the question. What was your Christmas gift that you did not get?
Bebop.
Obviously, you got everything. You had Michael Jordan shoes and parents.
Shout
and
out to my mom, and we actually have this on videotape of me just getting my butt whooped. But I cried and threw a fit over not getting Bebop, the action figure. And my poor mom had gone to like dozens of stores trying to find this one action figure, and she got me everything else but Bebop, and I threw a royal fit on Christmas.
Did you at least have Rocksteady?
Oh, I got everything else.
You got everything else? I thought maybe you had Rocksteady from oh my God. I thought maybe you had Rocksteady from your birthday or something. No, you got...
I believe if I go back to the video, I can show this to you probably. Pair of Jordans, Technodrome, all the Ninja Turtle guys, Shredder, no Bebop. So that's what I threw.
You're lucky I'm still on the call right now.
I can't help it. My parents spoiled me. I don't deny it.
Okay, well, you take it with grace.
Yeah. Scott shows up at the lawyer's office, and he wants to talk with Charlie, but they tell him he's already in with the judge. The judge says he hates to do this, but he's granted petition of Charlie to Mr. and Mrs. Miller here. So even though it's Christmas time, they're taking his son away from him. What do you think about this?
What's the story? I want to see the prequel movie that has Judge Reinhold an ugly haircut. So are they living together? Are they married? Like, what does that household look like? Because I think this judge is being very, 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 very speeding into a decision. I think it's ill-advised. It's ill-prepared. I'm not buying it.
Seems quick, for sure. So Scott is walking down the street next. He's completely distraught. He's got his hands in his pocket. He's kind of slumped over. And he decides he's just going to go see Charlie. And he goes and knocks on the door and kind of busts his way in. Neil tries to stop him. But Scott threatens to beat him up. Neil says, would Santa really beat somebody up? He goes, I'm about this close. Anyway, Charlie comes to the rescue, and he comes in and he tells Neil that he is Santa. He saw everything. And Charlie tosses Scott the snow globe that Bernard gave him, and it comes to life at that moment. And it's a really great moment here between Scott and his son. And out of nowhere, Bernard shows up too, as Laura and Neil are kind of arguing in the other room. And Charlie wants to go with. Bernard says it's fine with him if it's good with his dad. And as Laura enters the room, they've all disappeared out of thin air. What do you think of this scene?
I love that Bernard finally comes back.
Yes.
I love that the snow globe comes back. Like, it's, to me, from like a writing perspective, it's like they're slowly tightening on all of the strings of the story, and they're bringing everything back into play in such a great way. So now we have Bernard again. We have the snow globe again. Bernard, eating a hummus sandwich?
Yes.
Who ate hummus back in 1994?
I don't know.
Like, I'm being serious. Everybody out there, had you heard of hummus in 1994?
Nah, I didn't hear about hummus until a couple of years ago, so I didn't even know that was a thing. I don't know. In the police station next, they show a picture of Scott, and the cop says, this won't be easy. And another cop says, won't the bright red suit and beard kind of give him away? And everybody gets a chuckle out of it. Charlie calls home in the next scene. He tells his mom he's up at the North Pole. Everything's fine, and he will see them at Christmas. She tries to keep him on the line, but he hangs up. And they show that they've designed all these new cool features. A flame retardant suit, some different things with the sled. And Scott keeps asking the question of what happens if I fall off a roof? And nobody seems to ever answer that question. Why do you think that is?
I think that has to be the way that all Santa Claus die. Unfortunately.
So they just ignore it. They're just like, well, shit happens.
Well, it's not what happens when you fall off a roof. What happens is you die.
Right.
And you're replaced. That's what happens.
We have a montage next of the police pulling over a couple of fake Santas. And Charlie and Santa are getting ready to board the sleigh next. And this is kind of classic Santa Claus here, but and this is Scott and Charlie both combining on this, but he says, now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen. And Charlie says, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. And away they go. Laura this is all montage here. She's in she's in the police precinct, and she's looking at a lineup of Santas, none of which actually look anything like Scott. I also like the part where they yell, turn to the left, and there's like 3 guys that turn right. That made me laugh. Charlie shows him some updates on the sleigh. Scott says, nice, CD, compact disc. And Charlie says, no, it's a cookie cocoa dispenser. Makes warm hot chocolate, and then out pops a cookie. Why is that not a real thing? And if somebody can make it, tweet me right now, because I will pay you to put that in my car.
How much? How much would you pay?
I'd pay $500, cold hard cash.
Give me $750 and we'll call it a day.
I don't think you can do it. I don't think you're much of a woodsman.
No, but I will sleep in your car for a few weeks and hand you cookies and chocolate cocoa anytime you want it.
First house. So we're back in the sleigh, and the first house that he stops at is the little girl from last year that he was getting upset with. First thing she says is, you're fatter this year. Pretty much something everybody wants to hear, right? Boy, you gained a bunch of weight. You look terrible.
Yeah, but that's human nature. I think every human gains a little bit of weight each year. I mean, isn't that the point of Thanksgiving and then Christmas and then...
He also takes a drink of milk and makes like a sour face. And actually, he even says, it's a little sour. And she says, it's soy milk. You told me you were lactose intolerant. He says, yes, I did, didn't I? This time he pats her on the head, and he's super nice to her this time around. So just his attitude to Santa has completely changed. We go over to the Miller house, and the cops are set up waiting for Scott. He's putting some presents under the tree when they bust in and arrest him. And they put him inside the cop car, and as they're taking him kind of out of the house and to the car, little kids are watching, saying, let Santa go, let him go. And he tells the kids it's going to be okay. So Judy, who's on his radio, which is in his hat, has been trying to communicate with him. and they've pinpointed that the communication stopped at the Miller house. So time to deploy ELFS. I never caught what that actually stood for. Do you know off the top of your head?
No, but I hate it. This is one of the scenes that I hate it. It's time for elves with attitude. Like, oh. It's like the only thing I don't like about this movie is the montage where he gets in his flame retarded suit and they're walking down the hallway. Then they stop to do the dance.
Which, by the way, that was one of the interesting facts I didn't put out there. That was completely just off the cuff, that dance scene.
I hate that dance scene.
And the director thought it was funny, so he kept it in. So blame the director.
I do. I blame the director. I blame Terrell Malick. And I blame so many people for like my only non-favorite scene in the movie. Damn it.
Yeah. All right. And so in this next scene, Scott's going to be interrogated, and I'm going to start with another clip.
Oh, you're Scott Calvin. You know you're Scott Calvin. So let's make this simple. I say name, you say Scott Calvin. Name, Chris Green. Name, Santa Claus. Name, Père Noël. Babbo Natale. Père Nicole. Papa Gijo. Okay, Calvin. Maybe a couple hours in the tank will change your mind.
What do you think of this guy here, and why does he sound exactly like Jack Nicholson?
He really does. That's a really good point. I love this part because all the different names for Santa Claus that he's spitting out.
Santa
and
Claus.
It ends.
Papa Gijo.
It was like so quotable on the schoolyard as a kid.
Yeah.
It was almost like Mrs. Doubtfire. you would do. Hello.
Don't get me started, because I will pull out my Figaro. I'm not going to do it right now.
I hear dogs barking.
You guys just wait till we get to Mrs. Doubtfire. You're in for it. I've got impressions out the butt with that one. So the elves are now flying through the air, and they stop at the Miller house on top of the roof, and they get Charlie. The main elf, who's kind of taking the lead here, tells him to hold his hand and hang on. And by the way, don't ever try this at home without elf supervision. We're starting to get a little cheesy here, and I don't like it. What do you think?
I think that they could do a little bit cheddar, but it's Gouda overall.
Yeah. Okay. I like your cheese reference. We'll move on. So we're at the cop station next, and the cop, of course, is reading a book and eating a donut, as they usually do. And they enter, and you can barely see just the very tip of their head. And the guy leans forward in his chair and says he wants to know who they are. And the main elf says, "Your worst nightmare, elves with attitude." And they tie the cop up quickly, and then they go to the cells where he's being held, and they break him out with tinsel. So not just for decoration. And they run out with Santa Claus here. So any thoughts on this scene? I know you kind of crapped on it earlier.
Yeah, it gets a little too cheesy for me.
Yeah.
But again, that's an adult looking at a kid's movie, and having then we're saying that we saw it between 9, 12, 13 years old, like we sort of missed that window a little bit to an extent. But
Right.
like my little brother Jesse loved this part, like elves with attitude. He would run around every Christmas and he'd be like, "I'm an elf with attitude," and I'd be like, "Jesse, knock it off."
Hey, let me ask you this: was this before or after Jumanji scared him to death?
This is before.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, Jesse, I ratted you out.
It now hangs over his head for all time.
He hates that we told the world about that.
He really was upset. And if you want to hear Jesse being upset with his big brother about that, go back to our Saw episode, and that's our special guest, Jesse. He'll be back on a future episode for sure. We got to get Jesse back, probably for the Jonathan Taylor Thomas Chevy Chase movie, Man of the House.
Man of the House. I guarantee it, Jesse, you have no choice. Maybe we'll let him do a solo episode.
That'd be so awkward doing this by yourself. One point I wanted to make here, Yeah, I know we've gave a lot of credit to the writing, and it deserves a lot of credit because they've tied up every loose end. I have to believe that there's some missing scenes here because it feels too quick. That, you know, they catch him at the house, he gets interrogated, he gets broken out of the house, and then this next scene here that I'm going to get to is Charlie opening up the door and they're right back at the house again. And this is all within like 2 minutes. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that at least directorially they rely on the montage a little too much.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the time, when this movie came out, that was a little bit up Disney's
that was their thing.
repertoire. Like that was part of their shtick.
Yeah, we saw that in Mighty Ducks, and did we do any other Disneys?
Was Heavyweights Disney?
Yep, Heavyweights is Disney, and also Heavy Montage as well, and those are all around that same period, so that's a good point. So anyway, Charlie arrives home, the door opens, and he yells for Mom and Neil. Neil actually comes running first, and they kind of embrace, and Scott interrupts and says, "I don't have much time." And he tells Charlie he thinks it's a better idea for him to stay here with them and that he can't be selfish. And he reminds Charlie that he has millions of kids that are counting on him and he can't let them down. And he also tells Charlie that he gave him an awesome gift. Well, Charlie gave him an awesome gift by believing in him when no one else did. And he helped make him Santa Claus. And this is a really good scene between dad and son here. What did you think of this?
I think that that's a really good point that you make, that to say that it's between dad and son, and like a lot of the shtick that happens in the movie, it acts as like a parallel story between dad and son, and at the heart of the story is their fractured relationship growing closer and closer together.
Yeah.
You know, and for a lot of times, for a lot of families, for a lot of people from, you know, going back to, you know, this is the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, all the way back, like all throughout the past 100 years, Christmas is sort of the glue and like family relationships. And I think that this is sort of a metaphor for that we have Christmas, we have Santa Claus, we have that sort of coming to be the heart of what that family relationship is. And it's really, you know, bridging the gap. And, you know, we'll see that gap bridged between Scott and his ex-wife, even Scott and Neil, and Charlie. For as much as I hate him, like, I think that he has a good arc coming up at the end.
Yeah. So they hug, and Scott turns to Laura and says, "What do you think? He spends Christmas Eve with you guys from now on, and basically Christmas with Dad?" And Laura starts to tear up and says, "Oh my gosh, it really is you. You really are Santa Claus." And Scott makes a joke about her parents. They thought I'd never amount to anything. Neil tries to get him to break character here, but as he gets closer to Scott, he looks at him in the eyes and then calls him Santa. And he's just, his mind is blown. Laura enters and she gives Scott an early Christmas present. She throws the legal papers in the fire and says, "I want you to come visit Charlie as much as you can, anytime you can." Bernard shows back up out of nowhere, and this really freaks Neil out. And he says he's sucking us into his delusion. Look at the elaborate measures he's taken. And Laura, who now fully believes that Scott is Santa Claus, just says, "Neil, it's okay. I'll explain it to you later." And I love that Bernard comes back here. So they exit, the cops show up outside the house, and Laura goes out and says, "You're too late. He's already up the chimney." And all of a sudden, we see the sled and reindeer kind of lift from the roof, and they fly overhead here as everybody kind of looks on in amazement. And Scott flies over, or I should say Santa Claus at this point, and says, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Neil looks at Charlie and apologizes to him for not believing him. Charlie says, "It's okay. You were just denying your inner child." Neil says, "You know, you're going to make a great psychiatrist someday, kid." And Charlie said, "No, I think I'm going to go into the family business." And Santa drops 3 presents out of the sky. One for Neil, one for Laura, one for Charlie. Neil finally gets his weenie whistle, and Laura gets her mystery date game that she always wanted. What do you think of this scene here?
It was such a cool, like, capstone to everything that has gone on, and then to be able to give Neil his weenie whistle. And I want to hear your Neil one more time.
My weenie whistle.
It's a weenie whistle.
All right, go ahead.
And she gets the dating game. Like, it's cool because, again, everyone has, not everyone, if you don't celebrate Christmas, then I apologize for my offensive dialogue.
I don't apologize. This is America. You either like it or you don't.
I'm gonna re-say that in a more
I'm also
politically
joking.
correct way.
I'm joking, people. Don't tweet Justin your hate, not me. Go ahead.
Let's do this in a more politically correct way. Everybody has had a point in their life where they've wanted something, whether it be a present, whether it be something from an occasion, dates. You go to a restaurant and you're expecting Chili's to actually give you the baby back ribs that they sing about.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back.
And you get disappointed. You don't get what you wish for.
No.
And in this instance, it's rectifying like this lifetime of repressed anger that both of the ugly mom and Judge Reinhold have by giving them what has like destroyed their inner child. It's cool.
Right.
It's such a massive metaphor.
I love that Neil got his weenie whistle. In the next
Got the
scene here,
wiener in his mouth.
and he does. He's blowing away on that wiener too. In that next scene, Charlie is holding the snow globe in his hand, and he tells mom, or his mom comes out and tells him it's time to come inside. He says, "The stupid globe doesn't work." And Santa appears and says, "Give me a break. I was on my way to Cleveland." And he asks Laura if it's okay if he takes Charlie for a quick ride, and she agrees, just a quick one. And they float up toward the sled. And the final shot is the sled flying across the moon in the sky. What are your final thoughts on the movie here?
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
I have to say, this is, again, it's my favorite in the trilogy of movies for Santa Claus. I think this is the one that's written the best, acted the best. It's more, in my opinion, down to earth, not as corny as they make the sequels out to be. And every time I watch this movie, I don't feel like it's aging. I don't feel like it's not going to be fun to watch in 20 years. I think this is a movie that you'll be able to watch for the next 40, 50 years. And it still can kind of capture that imagination.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And that comes down to it being a well thought out movie, it having the right actors in the right positions at the right times to give the right performances. The same way that you can watch a movie from the 1940s or 50s and to be like, oh, look at Jimmy Stewart go, or, look at... You get what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not saying that Tim Allen's going to go down in the records as being like that amazing of a knockout actor, but in this role, he was the right actor.
I feel like
Santa Claus.
With him, they kind of caught like lightning in a bottle. Like the #1 TV show, he's got a best-selling book. He's being seen on millions and millions of screens every single week with Home Improvement, and then he comes and he knocks this role out of the park, and it's tailored to him. I mean, this very well could just be an episode of Home Improvement where he becomes Santa Claus, but I mean, he does an amazing job, and I give him a lot of credit. And he's not just funny in this movie, though. He's got a lot of heart too.
No, I agree. Like, I love, for anybody that hasn't seen Home Improvement or they're unfamiliar with Tim Taylor, that whole shtick, which if I'm not mistaken, is part of his stand-up too.
You know what you haven't done at all this entire episode?
Was that it?
Yes. So let's wrap this thing up. It's been a great 2017 of shows. I think we're off to a great start. Really looking forward to 2018. Again, go on our Twitter right now, @BackInTimePod, and vote for our second episode of January. Again, you're going to choose between Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Disturbing Behavior, or Urban Legend. So get out there and vote. And Justin, what are you hoping that gets picked for that episode?
All right, that's a really good question. I don't want to sway the audience.
Go ahead and sway him. This is your moment. We don't want Ace Ventura all over again.
Damn you all. Damn you all. I think Scream would be the most complicated movie to review.
Okay.
I think Urban Legend would be the second most complicated movie to review.
Okay.
I think Disturbing Behavior would be the funnest movie to review. And I'm hoping that it's I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Okay. I'm going to make it simple. I hope it's Scream. I haven't watched it in a long time, and I would love to go back and rewatch it.
See, this is the same. My thought process on this is the same as when we had Kindergarten Cop and Last Action Hero going neck to neck. Because in the most purest sense, like Last Action Hero is a spoof of Kindergarten Cop.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I loved our review of Kindergarten Cop because it was easy to focus in on that one movie as opposed to looking at the grand scheme of everything that Last Action Hero was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Scream looks at the whole pain of what is 80s horror movies and 90s horror movies and slashers and teen slashers, and it looks at everything. Whereas if you look at something like I Know What You Did Last Summer, vote for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I Know What You Did Last Summer is the best. It's like that little
Jennifer
microcosm.
Jennifer loves titties. Jennifer loves titties. Go ahead. Continue.
No, I'm looking forward. Whatever you guys vote for, those are like 4 of my favorite horror movies ever. So I'm super stoked.
I kind of want to see I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, just because of those 2 reasons. Anyway, we're on Instagram at Back in Time Pod. We are on our Facebook, facebook.com/Back in Time Pod. Every full episode is up now and streaming on YouTube. This episode will be up there as well. Throw us a subscribe on there. Give us a thumbs up. I'm at KAutry29 on social media if you want to find me. JD, what's your handle?
I am Unjust Justin. I'm
Awesome.
clever like that.
That is very clever. You're not just, but you are Justin?
I'm Unjust Justin.
Okay, you're unjust Justin. Okay.
Well, Justin was taken. So.
Okay. Right. But why don't you just do Justin?
Yeah, because that's just silly.
That is kind of silly.
Why do I not just sleep on an air mattress at night?
Do you? I kind of feel like
next.
I kind of feel like you do. All right, let's jump into the DeLorean. I'm going to punch in December 18, 2017. When this episode airs, it may be 2019, but it doesn't matter, people. We have a DeLorean. And we thank you for jumping back to 1994 and joining us all year long. We'll be back in 2018. We're going to be watching Speed. Great Scott. I can't wait to get into some Keanu Reeves. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening.
It means your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one. Both of you.